Welcome to Creating the Muse podcast, brought to you by Into Pages. This is a space where creativity takes center stage and entrepreneurship becomes an art form. Join us as we dive into the stories of visionary individuals who have harnessed their inner muse to build thriving businesses and craft lives of passion and purpose. Welcome to another episode of Creating the Muse. I'm your host, Indiana Holly, and today we have the privilege of welcoming a truly inspiring individual, Sophie Andrews, also known as the Meditation Hunter. Sophie's journey into holistic wellness and mindfulness practices began against a backdrop of diverse experiences. Born into a family of antique dealers and surrounded by the world of gemstones, she embarked on a path that led her through dusty opal mining towns and steamy sunrises in Sri Lanka. Despite success in the business world, Sophie found herself caught in a cycle of burnout. It was through an encounter with meditation and yoga that Sophie's life took a turn. Despite initial skepticism, she discovered the profound impacts of these ancient practices on her well-being. Through meditation, Sophie found clarity, purpose, and a newfound sense of freedom from external pressures. Without further ado, let's welcome Sophie. Sophie, welcome to Creating a Muse podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I was just reflecting on how we met and how that came about and how we ended up orbiting into each other's worlds. And I think it was through Samantha Wills, the
Yeah, that's
Institute.
right.
Yeah. So I just love how been able to attract such interesting and like-minded women through that container. So it's been wonderful. And I think I've known you for a couple of years now. Is that sounds a
I
bit
think
right, doesn't it?
because I think that was during COVID almost, was it? I feel like
Probably, yeah. Or if
maybe,
not
yeah,
earlier, I reckon it was earlier. So,
maybe. It's a
yeah.
while ago.
But I think she posted like, share your Instagram post, and I went and stalked everyone. I went, ooh,
Yeah,
yes, ooh, yes.
same.
It's been such an amazing joy to have you in my world. You just inspire me with the work that you do. And I just love your title, The Meditation Hunter. That's such a beautiful reflection of everything that you do and your online store and the content that you put out into the world. So, I guess for those that don't know who you are, do you want to give us a bit of background about your experience? In the antiques and gemstone industries and how that's shaped your journey to date.
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, so oh gosh, I mean, where to start? I originally I'm from the UK and I all my qualifications back there were in languages. So my mum's French. So I grew up
Wow.
speaking French, which then it actually makes it easier to learn other languages. And so anyway, I my uni degree was in languages, which is how I ended up in the gemstone industry. So I worked for the Trade Association over in the UK, and I used to travel with groups of British exhibitors to various gem shows and do all the translating. And um, I met a gem dealer, an Aussie gem dealer, which is how I ended up in Australia. And over here, European languages weren't kind of such a thing. They weren't so called for as they are over in Europe. And so that's, I suppose, when I did a bit of a switch. I stayed working in the gemstone industry here for probably about 6 years, and then set up my first business. So that was probably close to 20 years ago now, I guess. Um, and I had an accounting firm for probably about 16 years, which I built from the ground up. We specialised in dealing with creatives. So when I kind of first went into that industry, um, whilst I love business and I love setting up a business and I love the growth and the marketing, and the entrepreneurial side of it, accounting wasn't really like it didn't kind of really set my heart
Didn't
on
light
fire.
you up. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
not really. And so a couple of years in, that's when I decided to specialise in dealing with creatives because that was kind of the background that I come from, that sort of space. And so I had that business for 15, 16 years, and then I sold to a big national firm back in 2019, actually just before COVID, about 6 months before, which in hindsight was very well timed from a point of view of getting the best outcome for selling a business. Um, and yeah, I guess, you know, the meditation hunter came into being probably about 2 years after that. And I think I had this vision that I was so burnt out when I sold my business, which is why I sold. And I had this kind of, yeah, vision that I would sell the business, I would take a bit of time off, and then I would come up with the perfect business idea in the creative space that was
Mm,
something I actually really wanted to do. And it didn't really quite work out like that. I think I underestimated how long it would take to get over burnout. And also, you know, I think that, well, I don't think, I know that I thought from a logical place in my brain, I'd be able to come up with the perfect business.
mm,
But that's not how it works. You know, you have to feel into it and it kind of drops in when you least expect it. And the idea for the meditation hunter came, like I say, a couple of years later, just just out of the blue. And when I sort of look back on it, everything about the business ticked all the boxes that I've been trying to that I had on my list of like the perfect business has to have all these things. So these are all the things I enjoy. These are all the things I want it to involve. But my logical mind couldn't get there, and it was my not logical mind, but it was on another level that that idea kind of came in. And so, it was a good learning that you can't force these things. You can't,
mm.
we try and overthink the answers to a lot of things with our logical mind, but actually,
You have to follow
whilst the
your
answers are
heart.
always inside, they kind of come through other means. So I ended up starting the meditation hunter, and yeah,
Wow, I mean, what a transition from, going from antiques and gemstones, and then which clearly was your heart centered. Was that, or did you just fall into that, or was that
yeah.
a passion of yours to begin
The,
with?
the gem industry was always like a massive passion of mine, and it was an industry that I wanted to get into for a long time, and I was just really lucky that I ended up getting into that industry. What happened? I finished uni and I ended up getting a job, my first job for an engineering company, and it was
Wow.
back in the days before the internet where oh, it was just like the worst job. I won't even go into the details, but it was tough. And I think I'd been there about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 months. And I just remember waking up one day and going, okay, this is it. I'm going to give myself, I think I gave myself 8 weeks.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
going to give myself 8 weeks to find something else. Otherwise, I'm just going to resign and I'll just see what happens. And literally the day before the 8 weeks were up, I got the job working for the Trade Association, which was the most awesome job.
Oh,
So that was a really interesting experience, I guess, in terms of giving yourself a really set kind of deadline and watching that manifest. But yeah, like I did love working in that industry, and back then it was back in the days where the industry is quite different these days, in so many ways. But yeah, it was really kind of in its heyday back then. So with the meditation hunter, a big part of, I guess there's two aspects to it. There's the one-to-one kind of, I suppose, service offering side, but then there's the product side, which is where the antiques come in. And so I source and buy really old antique pieces that are connected to
mm,
spirituality, whether that's
mm.
Indian, Tibet, Japanese, and yeah, kind of, I guess, try and find them new homes. Although I do seem to
Keep
have,
them.
yeah, I do seem to keep so many of them. It's terrible.
It's like I got this awesome vine, but I don't know if I'll be
I know.
selling it.
And then I'll post it on Instagram. I'll be like, oh, and then people will contact me. I'll be like, oh, no one actually had decided to keep it. Sorry.
Oh, I'd love to see your home. I'm sure it's just full of gorgeous artifacts that you've just
Yeah,
collected that
it's
you were supposed to sell.
everywhere.
And you sound quite multifaceted, like, and how you were talking about swatches, you're quite diverse, different industries that you've been in. And then it sounds like when you were in accounting, you were saying your focus, your audience was creatives. So
Mhm.
it felt like you had, even though you were doing something that probably you were saying resulted in burnout, it's still, you had a filter over the top that aligned with your values about supporting
Yeah,
creatives. So,
yeah. And
yeah,
I mean, from a business model point of view, it was a great business to run, and it served me well, and it did end up being very successful. But yes,
what
I loved,
cost?
I mean, I loved the entrepreneurial side of it. Um, and back in the days when I started that business, it was kind of before. I don't even think the word entrepreneur was a thing, to be honest, back then. It was
Yeah, it
kind of
was
really in the early
literally
days.
entrepreneurs that the original definition of it was like from somebody out of Silicon Valley that comes up with something creative and innovative that's completely fills a gap that wasn't there before. I think
Yeah.
it's shifted quite a lot these days for what it is.
Yeah, it was a very different marketplace, and that the internet was even, still fairly new. The only way you could really get information on how to run a business was there was this one forum, I can't remember what it was called. There's this one forum online, and everybody who was running a business or like setting something up would go onto that forum. It was called Mums in Business, I think it was called. And it was like an absolute godsend, things like how do I take credit cards for my customers, things like that, that just none of us had
Oh,
any idea about. But it was and that was the only place you could really go to get information. It's not like it is today. So in some ways, it was easier because there wasn't so much competition, but in other ways, I think it was harder because there wasn't as much information as there is these days. Although, sometimes it's better to have less information because it's not quite so overwhelming. But yeah, it was really
mm.
interesting time.
Yeah, what's the saying? It's better to what's the word? Something about ask for, make a mistake or do it and then seek advice or something later on, like
Yeah,
apologize for it, even though you haven't. Yeah, but that's the best way to learn, isn't it? Like just
exactly,
throw yourself in the deep end and yeah,
exactly.
see what works out. And then you're like,
Yeah,
oh, I could have done it easier, but at least I gained this knowledge or
yeah, exactly. It's
yeah,
real education.
yeah. And can we touch on the burnout side of things? So after your successful business of 16 years as accountant, um, you then stated that you had envisioned what you would love to do as your purpose in your life, and what work you were doing. But was the hesitation not just um, the logic side of things, like you wanted to follow a specific plan, but was it your body actually forcing you to take a different approach and slow down? Did you find that was the case as well?
Um,
Or you just wait for it to unfold and see what came one
No,
step
I
at a
mean,
time?
the whole burnout thing was that in itself was interesting in that, looking back, that had been building for a number of years. And I remember a few years before I sold, I went to see someone and I think I saw them twice. And then they said to me, they were a burnout specialist. And then they said to me, I can't help you anymore. You're too burnt out. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
you have to go, and they gave me this huge long list of things I had to go and do, like change my diet and meditate and do all these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I remember looking at this list and going, okay, because I was like your typical A-type personality, it's like no patience for anything. I want it now.
Yeah, yeah.
So I said to her, well, okay. I said, how long do I have to do these things?
I want a timeline
Think,
on this
yeah,
recovery.
thinking, thinking she'd say, oh, like maybe 2 months, 3 months. And she said to me, well, if you're really consistent, maybe about 2 years. And I just remember being
That's a
so
reality
shocked and
of it.
horrified and thinking that can't
Yeah.
possibly be right. But it's true. Like burnout for so many people, like it builds up over a period of years, and you can't just get over it like that. And I reckon it probably took, what are we now, 2024? So it's been like 4 or 5 years since I sold the business. Yeah, there's still elements of it that are around at the moment, I suppose, but it definitely took probably a good 3 to 4 years for most of that burnout to kind of dissipate. So, was it my body telling me to, like, giving me that extra time to come up with something else? I don't think so. I think I was still very much in that entrepreneurial mindset of I just have to think of the right thing and
Mm.
then it'll happen.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
I was very much driven by the mind. Yeah, very much in that kind of masculine.
Pushing
energy,
and
I guess.
striving and
Right brain
hustling
energy. Yeah, yeah,
energy.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
for those that don't recognize signs of burnout, what were your what were the signs that you kept skipping over? Were you just like I'm very familiar with this as well. So it was like coffee, coffee, coffee,
Mm.
exhausted, pushing, striving, and then to the point where I couldn't move and get out of bed for a whole week until I regained the energy. And then I started the same patterns again. And so experiencing adrenal fatigue and weight gain and just, I think
Yeah,
when you're that exhausted, like self-care just doesn't even become a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just keeping your head above water and surviving.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I think I was so involved in the business, and that's all I thought about. All my friends were business owners. Like I had no life balance whatsoever. Um, I mean, I remember I got to the point, and particularly, with the industry that I was in, I was multitasking mentally constantly all day, every day, jumping in and out of client files. Some days I'd work on 30 different client files. And so mentally, your brain just becomes exhausted to the point where I remember I couldn't even read a book, I couldn't read a magazine. Like my brain literally couldn't take in any more information. It was
wow,
so
overloaded.
yeah, so overloaded
Yeah.
and so exhausted. And, and again, I remember I'd go back to Europe to see my family. And I remember one time I went back for 6 weeks and I did nothing for 6 weeks and just sat in the countryside with them.
Oh, how did
And
that
I,
feel though? Like
well,
going from,
you'd think, right? But then I
yeah.
came back and I didn't feel any better than when I left. And so
Oh
what
no.
ended up happening is, you kind of work really hard, you'd be exhausted, you'd take 2 or 3 weeks off, you'd feel better, and then you'd kind of keep going for another however long, and then you get exhausted again. And what happened is those windows of feeling okay got smaller and smaller and smaller until there was no point at all where I felt okay. And when I decided to sell, if I hadn't have sold, I reckon I would have just walked away from the business. Like I couldn't do it anymore.
Got too much.
It just got too much.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, it's like I always thought that to self-care was resting, like just being on the couch all day and watching Netflix for the whole day. I thought, but I read somewhere that it's actually not that doing that doesn't recharge your batteries. It's actually the joy aspects in your life that you love that light you up. So when you're busy and you're doing all the time, you don't go out for a bushwalk or chase waterfalls. These are my things. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like paint or do pottery. I didn't realize that gave you energy. I thought it was just literally work, 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 and then pass
yeah.
out. Work, work,
And, then,
work.
and I
Yeah.
think it's really easy to get into a place where I know that I used to think that even resting or doing any of those things was a complete waste of time. It was like
Oh,
it's being
wow.
lazy. Well, just not a waste of time, but
Oh,
it was
your mind
being
couldn't
lazy,
let you sit there.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when I had this big long list of things to do, like how could I justify doing these other things? Or if they,
Yeah, yeah.
my life was so out of kilter geared towards business that even a hobby, like if it wasn't somehow integrated into the business, like what was the point? I just
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
see the point of doing something just for the pure, like you say, joy of it. It was
Not
completely out of
realizing
hand.
how important that is. I actually now, to
Mm.
be honest, I have to schedule in joy in my diary just to make sure that I prioritize and it's red. It's a priority. Like, things
You can't miss it.
definitely type A personality that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So what does your day look like now? Like, what is the transition? What is the polarity of after 4 years that it's taken to heal burnout? What do you have in place now on a daily basis that ensures that that doesn't occur going
So I'm I won't say I'm pretty loose with it, but I'm flexible with it in that I think you can try and stick to a really rigid kind of regimen, but that in itself has issues, and so I kind of go with the flow. I do have a pretty strong sadhana practice, so um, I have my own personal yoga and meditation teacher that I've had for probably close to
Ah,
a decade. Um,
wow. Like
and
daily
so
or 3 times a week or
um, so it depends. Like probably every every second month, um, we sort of there's a group of a few of us who do a sadhana practice together, and that's daily for normally 21 days or sometimes 40 days.
Mm.
Um, I talk to her at least once a week, if not twice a week. And that might be through practice, or it might be, delving into sort of philosophical side of yoga. So yeah, I guess at least once a week. No, actually, probably more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
so,
the
sorry.
practice, can you explain the practice for those that aren't familiar with it, with the yoga
Yeah,
practice?
so I probably met my teacher in the depths of my what it was in the depths of my burnout, and that was a really weird kind of sliding doors moment, in that I had been living in the city renting this amazing house with my daughter, and um we had to move out. The owner was moving back in. This was a few years ago, and so we had to move out, and then anyway, the owner moved back in, or didn't even move back in. I'm not quite sure what happened, but anyway, the person who ended up moving in after us was my teacher, and so that's kind of how we met. In that she ended up
I
moving
love
into this
that.
house, and then I was in touch with the owner of the house and asked her for a recommendation for something completely different, and she recommended this person who then recommended this person who was renting our old house. So it was kind of this weird connection, that was sort of meant to be, but. Um, so the practice it's Sattva yoga, it's Himalayan yoga. So essentially, it's prayers. It's similar to Kundalini yoga, but different. So it's a mix of asana postures, meditation, mantras, um, movement, mudras. It's a whole combination, and then the
Mm.
philosophical side as well, and breath work as well. So it's very much a kind of, I guess, a practice that is handed down through oral tradition, through the masters, like from generation to generation, as opposed to some of the more structured,
Mm.
kind of more westernized forms of yoga. Um, and so a lot of yoga that's practiced in the Western world focuses on the posture side, on the asana,
Mm.
whereas yoga is there are 8 different limbs to yoga, and so that's only one of those 8 limbs. Meditation or a form of meditation forms another four, and then all the others are kind of more, I guess, the philosophical kind of life skills side. So yeah, we just kind of cover all of those different aspects to get that, and then you get that true balance of what yoga really is essentially meant to be.
That's so beautiful. It's very true. It's like in Western societies, we've turned yoga into more of a sport than it is an actual
Yeah,
practice of connecting with self. And you were touching on chanting, and I've never been one for chanting, but when I did my yoga teacher training, I think it was last year or the year before, fell in love with chanting. I didn't think I was that person, but
yeah,
it's kind of like sound healing. It just makes your skin just tingle and it just feels connected and like you're part of this collective. So,
yeah.
like,
It's amazing. I was in India in November. I went back a couple of months ago, and we were in Jaipur. And actually, it was second morning we were there, and we got up at, I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and we
wow.
went to this temple, this massive temple in the middle of Jaipur, Krishna temple, or Krishna. And I think this we got there at like 4:30, and there were thousands of people there. Apparently, they do it. I don't know if it was every morning or every week. I think it was like every
Every
morning. All these
morning.
people who
That'd
go
be
to this.
epic
Yeah,
start.
yeah. And like we walked in, and it was just this beautiful chanting and singing, and it just, thousands of people chanting. It was the most incredible experience. And, there's such an energy in that. And I remember thinking, this is how these people start their day every day. Like,
Yep.
and for most of us in the, more Western world, how do we start our day? Not like that, that's for sure.
No, I'm trying to change it myself instead of rolling into my work clothes and going to work and having no and letting the day take me away.
Mm,
Getting up at 5 a.m. and actually cutting out that slice of the morning for myself to do my yoga
yeah.
practice, to cuddle with my dog, to watch the sunrise. Like it's because it's celebrated mostly everywhere else except for
I know, I know.
Western
And well,
society.
that's actually how. partly how the meditation hunter started, in that I'd started working with my teacher, and she kept trying to get me to meditate, and I kept saying, like, everybody knows that you're supposed to meditate, right? But it's so hard to get started. And I came up with this idea. I think it was the middle of winter, and I thought, okay, if I make this really cool spot upstairs that I really want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go and hang out in, then maybe I want to meditate. And so I created this space of it was just like, had all these furs on the floor and all these beautiful
Oh,
cushions and like
just your
crystals. And I just made this,
sanctuary.
yeah, like this little cubby house almost. And
Did it
that was
work?
yeah, it
Oh,
did. Because
good.
I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh my God, I really want to go and hang out there. And so that's kind of how I made that transition, I suppose, to wanting to meditate in the mornings. And it is the best time to meditate first thing in the morning before your brain really kicks in.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, that was kind of, look, and do we need things to help us meditate? No, we don't.
no,
But
yeah.
but it is, for a lot of people, it is a hard thing to get started with. And so I kind of think, whatever you can do to help yourself transition into that new practice is fine, really.
I agree. And there's so many different ways to meditate, like staring at a candle or quietening the mind, and I've tried several different forms. And I think mine, I do love the guided, like the Dr. Joe Dispenza stuff. I find when it's good a distraction that my mind doesn't wander because then I'm visualizing and I'm dreaming and I'm focusing. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
see,
everyone's
see,
different. I know. I but I still feel fantastic afterwards. Do you know what I mean? So, but
I
I know where
do.
you're gonna go with it.
Oh, do you want me to go there?
Do it, definitely.
It's a very yes, and it's a great way for most people to start to meditate. But if you really want to train your mind, it's
Mm,
not going to happen doing it that way, because essentially you're not you kind of it's kind of reactive meditation as opposed to proactive meditation,
like
right? So
the masculine versus feminine way of doing
well,
things, sort of
I
thing.
mean,
Yeah, yeah.
you're kind of listening to what someone's telling you to do, and yes, they can take you into a place of relaxation,
Mm,
right? But you're not accessing the different levels of your brain yourself. So you're not learning how to access those different kind of dimensions, I guess, that come
mm,
through meditation. And so, whilst it is great as a form of getting into meditation, once you've been doing it sort of for, I mean, a year, if you're still doing guided meditation after a year, then
it's time to level up.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
I
love
know
it.
it's hard, but the benefits are so good. When
Mm,
you do actually learn to do it yourself, and you learn to switch your brain off and just literally sit there in silence, and you
mm,
know, amazing things start happening. You get these, it's almost like these drops of information coming through, and yeah, it's just a whole different world.
I love that. I do have to admit, when I go camping, it's just me in the trees and there's no other distraction. It's easier to meditate when you're in nature.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and look, for most people, we don't live in India, we don't sit on mountaintops with no distractions.
No,
It's just not
yeah.
it's not the real
It'd be
world.
nice.
Yeah. And so for most people, the easiest way to get into meditation is through breath work. Like, that's where I always say to people to start with breath work, because that there's some amazing techniques that can get you to calm yourself really quickly, really easily. They're super easy to remember. You can do them just for a couple of minutes whenever, when you're in the car, when
Mm,
wherever you might be. And then with meditation, like you say, there are so many different ways to meditate, and it's whenever I teach people, I would say, okay, here are like 10 different ways of meditating. Let's try them all and see which one resonates with you. Like,
resonates with you best. Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of people that well, there is a lot of expectation in the meditation world that this is the way you meditate and this is the only way to do it. And
It's a lot of pressure on people, which is probably why they go, bugger this is too hard, sort of thing.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
there are different ways that work for different people. And, there is no set way that you have to do it. Like, yoga it's a living practice, right? it's constantly being adapted and amended and changed, and people add their own kind of elements to it. So yeah.
So you touched on when you, I think you said teach people meditation. Can we talk
Mhm.
about what courses and offerings that you do provide to support people who would like to explore 101 meditation? Where do they go? Where do they begin? Can you tell us about the services that you offer?
Yeah, sure. So with meditation, I tend to not just teach meditation. I teach lots of different aspects. So to give you an example, I was working with someone not so long ago. She did, I think it was 6 weeks with me, so it was once a week, and we'd catch up for an hour to an hour and a half. I think about an hour and a half actually. And I sort of touched on a whole bunch of different aspects. So she was someone who's in a situation, very A-type personality, which I very much understand. Um, A-type personality, working, had a very difficult time getting pregnant the first time with her first pregnancy, wanted to have another child, but felt that her life wasn't in balance to be able to do that, and it was proving difficult. And so with her, what I did, which is what I do with a lot of people, is took her through, I guess, a kind of top level of all the different kind of, not all of them, but most of the different 8 limbs of yoga. So, we touched on things like her diet from an Ayurvedic point of view, like
Mm.
touched on the real high level stuff with that and had a look at that. Um, we touched on again like all the different types and forms of meditation. Um, Looked at how her daily structure to her life was. So meditation, yes, I can teach people how to meditate, but unless you've kind of got all these other things in your life that are kind of aligning, it's probably going to be quite hard to stick to it. Or
Mm.
you're probably not going to get the best benefit to it. So it depends what people want. If people are pretty aligned in those aspects and they literally just want to learn how to meditate, then that's easy. I can teach them how to do that. And like I say, I go through all the different aspects, whether it's it's guided meditation, it's silent meditation, it's mantra meditation. So mantra meditation, there are half a dozen mantras that are very easy to start off with. Oh, sorry, there's my cat.
Oh,
Um,
hello.
Being nosy.
A nice
And then
guess.
and then and then they get more complicated, and you have more words added. So that's mantra meditation. Or there's mantra meditation where you've got the Indian or whatever it is mantra music, and you meditate into that. Japa meditation, which is with the mala beads. I don't know if you've
Oh,
tried that
I've
before.
got the 108 beads. Is
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I know for me personally, like I differ all the time. Sometimes I just like doing silence. Sometimes I love doing the mala meditation. Um, so yeah, so there's that, and then there's the Kriyas as well. So I teach Kriya yoga as well. So I did my teacher training. I finished that a couple of years ago.
Well, it's as though you're offering this a service where you can bring everything into alignment because it's kind of you can eat all the broccoli and do all the running, but if your relationships suck and you hate your job and like your health is not going to be the best sort of thing. So it feels like you're aligning every aspect and supporting them through that process so that they can actually do the meditation and be impacted from it. Is that
I mean,
what you were saying?
yeah, I think it's always going to be a journey. It's a journey for me, and it always will be, and the same for everyone else. I think,
Yeah.
it's if you ever get to a place where everything's perfectly aligned, then you know, I mean,
Are we human?
you're probably a guru sitting somewhere on a mountain, right? Yeah. I mean, stuff happens all the time, and we get out of alignment, and then we're back in alignment, and then so
Yeah.
it is always constantly a journey, and it's taking things step by step, and so it's more so, I guess, the way I teach is to get an overview of all those different sort of elements and go, okay, what are some really easy, like I'm a big believer in practical stuff that you can implement straight away. So what are some really easy kind of practical things that
Micro
you can do?
things. Yeah.
Yeah, that you're gonna see changes pretty quickly. Because I know for me, like I say, I do work with a lot of A-type people, And I suppose I track that because that's kind of, the people I
You
understand.
have an
But
understanding.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, and you do want things to change quickly, and waiting for things to change is really frustrating. And so I
Yeah.
know that, I want to be able to give that to people and to be able to say, okay, here's something you can do really quickly, really easily, and you'll be able to see changes from it.
Mm.
So
And like you said, it can be incredibly small. It can go from not drinking water to all of a sudden drinking a glass of water a day. To just have that
yeah.
crowding out aspect. So, you're drinking less wine and perhaps drinking more water. So eventually it just shifts in
Well, that's
dynamics. So,
right. And it can become very overwhelming. That person I was talking about at the beginning, who I went to see, who gave me this long list of things to do to get past burnout. When you're burnt out or you're overwhelmed, that's not helpful because that just makes you even more overwhelmed. And so,
mm,
really it's just like just starting with one little thing at a time and
you're so
changing like step by step by step.
you're so right. It's kind of like, oh, now I have to do more. I've got to add more things to my to-do list, and it shouldn't be
Yeah,
about that. But that's how it feels when you're experiencing burnout. So,
yeah.
like, I don't have energy to do anything else, and now you want me to add more
Yeah, exactly.
into
I know.
my
It's like, do you
life.
understand? I'm burnt out. I can't do this.
And I want to go back and touch on travel. You seem to get
Yeah.
such growth and well-being. Like, I love witnessing you when you travel. It's like you go there. It's like it changes you. You go there, you savor it to a whole new level. People go, "Oh, I'm traveling," and they go, "This was beautiful and that was beautiful," but it feels like it has such a impact on who you are. Like it just adds more to who you are as a person. So can you talk a bit more about that aspect of
Yeah. I
savoring it?
think I mean I have a fascination for other cultures and I don't know whether that's maybe partly because I was brought up in a family, where my mum was French. We spent a lot of time in France, and growing up in the UK, where everything in Europe's so close.
Mm.
You do, or I was brought up to travel. Like that was just something that we did. Um, but I mean, I just really connect with cultures. I connect with, and you travel to a place like India that friend and I were trying to explain to each other or describe to each other how you explain India to someone that hasn't been there. And it's I never had any interest in going like at all. And I went the first time and I absolutely fell in love with it. And I think to give that as an example, it's a country that is so multifaceted, it has so many layers to it, so much depth to it. There is so much ritual in the everyday life, um, constant movement, constant color. It's just such a fascinating country, and it's a sort of place where you could spend every day for the rest of your life and still not have seen everything. There is such
Wow.
a depth to it and um, such an ancientness to so much of it as well, I guess.
Mm.
Things that have been going on for thousands of years, and that's all still highly respected by the people that live there and practiced. And
The traditions.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
just find that so fascinating. And I mean, I grew up in a really old town or village in England. My parents still live in the house that I was born in. It's a 400-year-old house. So
Wow.
I grew up sort of surrounded by different cultures and by old things. And yeah, to me, to travel to a country where there's nothing really to do except for sit on a beach, like would
No,
drive me.
no,
It's just not
insane.
my,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not my thing. Um,
I never got that.
and
When people go travel somewhere to just stay at the resort, it's like there's hiking, there's
I
things to look
know,
at.
there's so much to see. And I think, I don't know, like visually, I get really stimulated visually. And, um, part of that is because I do love photography, I guess. So from that point of view, but also, um, I don't know, I guess I just have a heightened kind of visual sense. Um, and so, yeah, traveling, I mean, uh, I love growth as well. And so going to these different places and just learning about their cultures and just traveling through them and just seeing these lands that, the first time I went to India, we got up early one morning and we went up this mountain, up and up and up. We were at the base of the Himalayas and we went, I don't know, for about 2 or 3 hours. We were driving up these rocky roads and then we came out at the top and it was like this whole different ecosystem. It was almost,
Oh,
it felt completely untouched by human. And
oh,
so we'd gone from this really busy kind of Indian, polluted
city.
town
Yeah, yeah.
up to this kind of this amazing place. And it wasn't untouched by man, but it felt like it was. It just felt completely different. And
Preserved by man, sort of thing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you start being able to tap into the energies of the different
Oh,
places and just, feel the difference.
you have such a beautiful way of explaining things, like so emotive. Like I know when you were there was a post that you said about going back home and something about bluebells, or I
Oh
can't remember the
yeah.
specifics of it, and I was like, I want to go.
I'm going in April actually, and
Yay!
I
Oh my
think I've
God.
I think I've timed it. The Bluebell Woods in England. I think they're only there for about 6 weeks every year, depending on the weather. So I'm hoping that I've timed it right.
Oh,
We'll
how
see.
exciting is that? And you're going to go back and see your folks? Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So April, I'm going back. Yeah.
Do you ever feel nostalgic when you go back? Like, do you feel, was it just
It's
like a different lifetime ago sort of thing? Or is
it's
it
it's
still
interesting.
home?
I went back last year, and that was the first time where I thought, oh, could I actually move back here one day? And I'd never thought that before. And I think the answer, I think that was coming from a kind of, it was a beautiful summer. The weather was amazing. All my old friends were there. I spent a lot of time with my family. Like it was just that real quintessential English holiday in the sun. And it was, everything about it was perfect. But England never felt like home for me growing up.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
Australia's never felt like home for me either, having said that, and I've been here 30 years.
Wow.
So, France is very much where my soul is, and
Yeah,
India,
yeah.
really. They would be the two
They're your
places that,
two, yeah, where you feel
uh,
connected the most. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like that whole having a yearning. Like my family's from South Africa and I've never been, but I have a yearning. Like there's this deep core within you that said you must go to this land. And,
yeah,
so yeah, but they left through the Mau Mau uprising, so they're quite traumatized by it. So every time I say, I want
yeah,
to go back to South Africa, and they're like, no, like because it was really
yeah,
traumatizing to flee the country. So yeah, but you just got to do it, right? Because it's your innate thing that's yearning, telling
yeah.
you
And
to
it
go.
is. It's like, I was telling someone the other day, I was just like, oh my God, like I literally, my heart hurts sometimes when I think about the fact that I'm not in India or I'm not in France. Like
Oh,
it's actually like this physical thing. But yeah, it's hard to explain it to someone who kind of, I try and explain it to my partner and he has no idea what I'm
yeah,
talking
doesn't know
about.
the feeling that you're referring
No,
to. Oh, I'm so love that
no,
you're in love with France. I've never been, but I've my goal this year is to save money to go next year in September. So I have no idea where I'm going to go or what I'm going to do, and just but so I might touch base with you about some tips of
yeah,
where
France
to.
is
Yeah,
amazing.
I just want to go there and dip a croissant in a
Yeah,
cappuccino. I'll come back double my size, I think.
yeah, that's one problem with France. That does happen.
All the pastries.
Yeah.
So what's next? I know you and I have had a conversation about you falling in love with the idea of I think you're researching karmic lives or yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of deep study. I'm allocating a lot of this year actually to studying about karma and how it affects people, how it's something that we all have.
Mm,
Um, where karma comes from, how you can identify those karmic patterns, how you can clear those patterns. Um, so I'm doing a lot of study on that.
wow.
Um, and it's, it is really fascinating. Um, and then I've also been working on a book for the last probably
What?
yeah, but you know what? I've been working on it since when did COVID start? 2020, wasn't it? So
Yeah, started
yeah,
April 2020, I think, somewhere
yeah,
around
I've
there.
been
Yeah.
working on it since 2019, and it kind of got a bit sidelined for a couple of years, and it's just kind of being resurrected again. It's a bit of a work in progress. So we'll see. Maybe I'll finish that this
That's
year. You never know.
exciting. Oh, go back to France and do that. That's what you
Yeah,
should do. Just And I love that you touch. It's funny. I thought when you referred to karma, I used to think it was like, somebody does you wrong, they get their own sort of thing, but I didn't actually realize that karma was kind of like karmic generational
yeah. I mean, it can
patterns of
be. There's so many different aspects to it. You've got your own personal karma. You've got your family karma that you bring into this lifetime. You've got environmental. There's
wow.
collective karma. There's so many different elements, and it's um I have this mantra that so actually my teacher told me this a couple of months ago, and I was getting caught up um, in someone else's, not getting caught up in someone else's drama, but getting affected by someone else's drama. And she said to me, you just have to remember it's their karma, it's not your karma. And so
Oh.
every time I feel myself getting caught up in something like that, I just say that mantra to myself, and it's because I go, yeah,
I
you know what? It's like I don't actually have to worry about this because it's not my karma, it's their karma.
I love it. I think my saying on that is it's not my monkey, it's not my circus. So that could be the
Yeah,
same thing. But I'm similar to you. I can get so swept and feel it and feel anxiety from it. So and then
yeah.
I have to
Especially if
remind
you
myself.
if you're quite an emotive, person, and it's very easy to pick up on other people's energy, and and if you're very compassionate as well towards people, and yeah, it is easy to pick up on those energies, and so it's important to have those techniques to be able to just kind of hold yourself back
Not
and have those
absorb it.
boundaries. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm so curious to hear what's going to unfold from that, especially about your book. I'm gonna have to quiz you a bit more about that. But I love that we touched on you writing because you're going to offer you quite generously offered to be a contributor to the magazine as well. So I'm
Yes, I'd
so
love to.
excited to have you on board. Yeah, that's going to be just such a different perspective and because what we usually do is have a theme. So it's like, as you know, your theme for your cover was the laws of nature. So it's just interesting to see all the contributors in their perspective around that and what they bring to the table. So I just think it's going to bring in a whole new overview and just to give you a tidbit, the next March one is imagination. So that can go
Okay,
anywhere and everywhere. So it'd be interesting to
awesome.
see what your perspective is about that.
Yeah,
Um, but I guess we better wrap things up because I could talk
yes.
to you for ages and explore so much about your beautiful offerings that you provide. Um, but before we head into rapid fire questions, I just wanted to say thank you. So grateful for you taking the time. It's been such a wonderful honor and a privilege to witness you and be following your journey for a couple of years now. And I just love now that we get to co-create on something together as well. So
So
thank you
much
from the
fun.
bottom of my heart. You are such
Thank
an
you.
inspiration. Your journey is extraordinary and you just, yeah, constantly inspire me. So
Oh, thank
really
you.
appreciate it. But I guess let's wrap into our
Okay.
rapid fires. So let's start with a favorite book. What is a favorite book that has significantly impacted you? And if not, you can always give one or two. So because it's
It
a
is
hard
it is a really hard one. I come from a family, I think my parents at last count had about 3,000 books in their house.
What? Oh
I know
my
there's like
God,
books
your library.
everywhere.
Insane. That's a perfect home.
I know, and I've just got books everywhere too. I was trying to think of,
Oh,
I mean, there's so many favorite books, but one that I still remember I first picked up, and I've still got it. I literally got it out last week for a completely different reason. I was just thinking about it. There's a book called Holistics, and it was
oh,
written 30, I think it was 1990 it was written. I
wow.
don't think you can even get it anymore. And it was just one of those random books. I don't even know where I got it from. Um, and it was fascinating. It was all basically about holistic wellness, but it was probably before holistic wellness was a thing,
I love
if
that.
that makes sense. And it's a
Yeah.
book that I've always carried around with me. I've moved house so many times in my life, and I still have that book. Um, And so that one made a massive impact on me. And I don't even know why back in those days. Like I just love the fact that it touched on all the different elements of wellness, and it just, I think, because I have such a kind of creative mind, it satisfied all those different bits of my mind, if that makes
Yes,
sense. It wasn't like a very,
definitely.
um,
Gave
so
you
that's
permission to be in
yeah,
put your fingers in all different pies. I
yeah,
love it. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So that was a really good one, and another one that I picked up probably about goodness, probably about 8 years ago. And again, I don't know if you can still get this book. It's called Midlife Manifesto.
Oh,
And I
okay.
guess it was similar in a way, but different. But it's a book, and again, I've still got it here somewhere, so I'll give you the details.
That'd be great.
If you wanted
Yeah.
it, but it was quite a holistic book written about, what happens when women get to that kind of midlife place, and touched on so many different aspects.
And
So
it's quite an old book you were saying. Is it you it's
yeah, that one I reckon probably about 8 or 10 years ago.
oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I'll give you the details. I've got
Yeah,
it.
that'd be
I've got
great
that
because
one
I'm
here still
exploring that
too.
at the moment because I've been having conversations with my mum and my auntie about because they're being really upfront and honest to telling me what to prepare myself for because we're not educated in anything to
No,
do with midlife and is it perimenopause and menopause and
yeah,
so I was under the idea that, yay, because I've had hormonal issues since I was 13 with my period. It's like, yay, I can't wait till I get menopause and no more period. But then I didn't realize, oh, you just have new different hormones to deal with.
yeah. I mean, I think it pretty much follows, or it tends to follow what your mother's gone through. So if your mum's had like a really easy menopause, which
Yeah,
luckily for
yeah.
me, mine did, then you're kind of going to probably sail through it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, no, I've got a really good girlfriend at the moment. She's 48, I think. And she's like, for about 6 months, she's been saying to me, her joints ache all the time. She's always tired, like all these symptoms that people don't think of as
No, what
menopause.
talk about? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's what it is, that's what she's going through. But
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this could be a whole new podcast to talk about this side of
yeah,
things that I would really love to delve into. But that's a good tip of what my mum's going through is potentially what I'll go through. So I guess that's why
yeah.
she's saying to me, you got to manage your anxiety and stress, or else you're going to have serious gut issues when you're my age. So I've got to
Mm,
learn to listen to my mum.
yeah. Yes, mum's know
Manage my
best.
stress. Yes. Thank you for that. Phenomenal book ideas. I love that. I don't know if I'll get my hands on the first one though, but that
No,
I
in fact, this is hang on, I've got it right here. This is the first one. See how like
oh
how different it is?
wow. Yeah, I love
Such
it.
a cool book
So
though.
80s. I love it.
I know, and I've flipped through it so many
Such a
times.
good book.
It's
Yeah.
such a good book. But
And the first book that you were referring to, I love it because it kind of, when you pick up material like that, kind of makes you feel like you have been on the right path, especially when you're multifaceted. Because I know growing up in school or mentors have always said, oh, you're very flighty and all these judgments because I like doing several different things. So
yeah,
when you pick up a book like that, it's like, good. I'm in alignment with myself. So
it's interesting though because I'm the same as you in that I'm always across like I having to focus on just one thing I find quite hard. I'm always kind of multi-focused, but in um in Jyotish astrology, which is the Indian kind of
oh
yogic
yeah,
form of
yeah.
astrology, which delves in a lot deeper. I know when I had my mine first done, a lot of my planets are in a particular part of my chart, which explains why I'm always kind of like,
Wow.
for me to run just one business at a time,
Would never
I find
happen.
quite boring. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you'd probably find the same if you had your chart done that.
I know somebody that does that. So, yeah, maybe I should reach out and get her to do my chart
Yeah,
reading. So it'd be
yeah, it's quite
fascinating. I'll let you
fascinating.
know if I come back and it'll be something
And then
similar
it's and
because,
then it's really good because then at least you understand why you are the way you are. And it's like, okay, so
yeah,
it's not actually a problem, it just is
it's just who I
it
am.
is.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that so
Exactly.
much. A best investment that you've ever made for yourself on yourself.
I'd say probably travel.
Yeah, it's a good one. You can see that. You really embody that. So,
Just love it.
and morning routine. How do you get into a mindset before taking on the day? With what particular routine that you use that makes you sets you up to move forward with
Yeah,
the day?
it does change depending on what I'm sort of up to, but my most consistent one that really always changes my mindset for the day is getting up and doing sunrise walk,
Mm.
and doing it on my own. So I I started doing that maybe like 3 years ago, I think, and I always used to, want to go walking in the morning and I'd wait for my partner and he'd always change his mind at the last minute. Then I wouldn't go and then I'd be frustrated. And then one morning I went, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm a grown ass woman. I should be able to get up on my own and go for a walk. And so I did. And then I just found this whole joy of just, getting up before the rest of the world's up, when the birds are just waking up, and there's this one
Mm.
track where there's loads of bunny rabbits. And I know in Australia bunny
Aw.
rabbits aren't such a great thing, but
Oh,
in
really?
England, like, we
I
love
love
bunny rabbits.
Zampa. Yeah.
So there's always bunnies jumping around, and I
Aw.
get up and watch the sunrise, and by the time you're home and sort of showered, you're wide awake and you're just
Yeah.
ready to go. And so and then I sort of do a little meditation, and so that I just love sunrises. I just love getting up and
It's
doing
like
that.
a dream, isn't it? When it first sun first cracks and it's
Yeah,
like this bright pink or orange before the even sun comes up. It
so
makes you feel like you're
energizing.
in What Dreams May Come. I love that movie so much because of that
Yeah.
aesthetic. So yeah. And I love that it's kind of like you're giving back to yourself first and foremost before anything else by doing that. So what a beautiful gift to give to yourself. And last question, which
Yeah.
is the whole reason why we're here, is what does creating the muse mean to you, and how has it impacted your artistic expression in business and in life? So basically, what does creating muse mean to you? Full stop. We don't have to must shorten
Um,
that.
yeah, I thought about this and I thought, yeah, what immediately came to me is, for me, creating muse is it's finding that inspiration, and it's the way that I do that is from a visual point of view. So sometimes I want to end up somewhere, or I have an idea or whatever it is, but it's something I can't articulate into words. I don't even know what it is. I just kind of know there's something kind of
Brewing.
brewing,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
so I get onto Pinterest, and I just collate or curate images which speak to me, and I might have no idea why. And then I'll kind of put them together, and then I'll put them up on the wall. I've got one up on the wall here, and then I just let it kind of ruminate, and then something will come from that. So it's almost, I guess, putting into visuals what's in the back of my head at a subconscious level that hasn't yet come through to the conscious,
I
but it's come through to the conscious on a visual level, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it makes complete sense
Just not
because
on a
I
verbal
operate
sense.
the same. Yeah, because I'm very visual. So if I have a spark of interest and it's not familiar to me, but I know I can taste it and I want it. So then I go,
Yeah,
it's like you're using Pinterest and Instagram as little like tools to help build what that
yeah,
vision is that you're feeling that needs to come out. So I can
yeah.
totally relate.
And
I
then one day you
love
look at it
that.
and you go, oh, I know what that is. That's the book that I'm gonna write, or that's the whatever it is. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's that uh subconscious kind of knowledge that these particular visuals mean something.
Yeah. Kind
But
of like you got to go and work for it now to get it to come to vision.
yeah,
I just want to know now is how I.
I
It's like
know.
when I
We go,
became a copywriter and it's like, I want to be a copywriter. I want to write for people. I want to storytell for people. And it's like, I was looking at other copywriters. It's not it.
yeah,
So it fairy tales and, that kind of thing. And then it came to life from that aspect, which is totally
yeah,
not. Yeah. So I'm so with you. I can totally relate. Yeah. Being a visual person. I love your
yeah.
process. So yeah. Oh, well, that was absolutely phenomenal. I just loved speaking to you. I love that I got the
Um,
opportunity to see you like face to face. I mean, we've met before via
yeah,
Zoom, but yeah, to delve into your beautiful world and just to talk about your essence and who you are and what makes you who you are. It's just been such a joy. Before we leave, can you tell people where they can find you and purchase your goodies? Because it's not just antiques, it's also you've got beautiful tonics and herbs and yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's a real mix of things. Some real bespoke products, and I bring in Anima Mundi products,
Mm,
herbal
I
products from the
love her.
US.
Her,
Yeah,
yeah,
amazing, amazing
extraordinary woman.
products.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the website is themeditationhunter.com.au, and you can book in for personal sessions on there as well as all the products are on there. I am behind in listing products.
Oh,
I think I'm very bad at that. I do a whole bunch of things to list. And so on my Instagram, The Meditation Hunter, I do quite often put up new products on the stories as well. So it's always worth keeping an eye open
mm.
there. But also, if anyone's after anything really specific, then to just let me know because I come across things all the time. And yeah, sometimes I'm sitting here at the moment looking at about, I don't know, 10 Indian deity statues that seem to have found their way onto my
Oh,
desk as
I
opposed to into the
love
shop.
that.
So yeah, if
We need
people
to
are
get a
after anything,
photo of that, please.
yeah, yes,
I swear I cannot wait to come to Sydney and explore your home. No, yeah, just
yes.
invite myself over, but yeah. Oh, thank you again. That was
Thank
an
you so
amazing
much.
conversation, and I cannot wait to feature you in the coming weeks on the front cover. The photo is phenomenal.
See you.
See ya.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.